People don't buy products. They buy feelings. They buy trust. They buy the story you tell. You can sell faster, easier, and more powerfully, but only if your story sells before your product does. This isn't about manipulation. It's about connection. Welcome to Sell with a Story, where we turn ordinary sales into unforgettable experiences and teach you how to make every word, every pitch, every conversation sell itself. Chapter 1. Stop selling. Start storytelling. Let's start with a simple truth. People don't buy products. They buy feelings. They buy connection. They buy trust. You can have the best product in the world. You can know every feature, every technical detail, every perfect argument. But if you can't make people feel, you'll never make them buy. That's why you must stop selling and start storytelling, because stories sell where logic fails. Stories build bridges where data builds walls. Stories make people remember you when facts make them forget everything else. That's the key. Think about the last time someone sold you something. They probably told you about specifications, benefits, comparisons. Maybe they showed charts or statistics, and you nodded politely, but you forgot it the moment they left. Now think about the last time someone told you a story. A real story. About struggle, about growth, about purpose. You didn't just remember it. You felt it. And that feeling stayed with you. That's what people buy. The feeling. Not the product. Not the pitch. The feeling. When you sell with a story, you bypass logic and go straight to emotion. And emotion decides faster than reason ever could. You have to understand this. Selling is not about convincing. It's about connecting. It's not about pressure. It's about presence. You don't need their permission to tell your story. You just need the courage to be real. When you sell with a story, you're not forcing a product into their life. You're showing them how your story fits into their story. You're giving them something bigger than a product. You're giving them a reason to believe. That's what separates the amateurs from the professionals. Amateurs push products. Professionals pull people in with stories. Here's what most people get wrong. They think storytelling is decoration. Something fancy to make their presentation interesting. Wrong. Storytelling is the presentation. It's the engine. It's the core of persuasion. Data can inform. Logic can explain. But stories inspire action. You want someone to buy? Tell them who you are. Tell them why it matters. Tell them what happened when you were exactly where they are now. That's how connection begins. Let's make this real. Imagine two salespeople. The first says, "Our new software has a 40% faster processing speed than the previous version." Sounds impressive, right? But the customer is already half distracted. The second says, "I had a client last year who almost shut down their business because their system kept crashing. They switched to our software, and within 2 months, they saved enough time to hire 2 new employees instead of firing them." Which one do you remember? Which one do you feel exactly? The story wins every time. Because stories create emotion. Emotion drives decision, and decisions drive sales. You have a choice. You can keep talking about features, benefits, and pricing. Or you can talk about change, transformation, and impact. Stop trying to impress. Start trying to connect. Because when you connect emotionally, the mind follows automatically. That's the secret. That's the key. When you tell a story, you give people a mirror. You let them see themselves inside your message. You let them imagine the transformation before it happens. That's how you sell, by making them see it first. Here's what I want you to do, starting today. Step 1. Write down one personal story connected to your product or service. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be real. Something that made you believe in what you sell. Step 2. Find the emotion in that story. Was it frustration? Relief? Excitement? Pride? Whatever it was, led with that emotion. Step 3. Practice telling that story until it sounds effortless. Not rehearsed. Not memorized. Natural. Because authenticity sells more than perfection ever will. That's how you move from talking to touching. From pitching to connecting. From selling to storytelling. Remember this phrase. Stories stick. Data fades. Emotion buys. Say it again. Stories stick. Data fades. Emotion buys. Every great salesperson knows it. Every great leader uses it. Every great communicator lives by it. If you want people to follow you, to buy from you, to believe you, then your story is your greatest tool. Your story is your currency. Your story is your power. Now let me challenge you. Stop waiting for the perfect story. Use the one you already lived. Use the moment you struggled. Use the time you failed and got back up. Because people don't relate to perfection. They relate to truth. When you speak from truth, people lean in. When you speak from heart, people remember. When you speak from emotion, people act. That's how you lead them. That's how you sell. The world is full of sellers. Very few are storytellers. But those few build empires, create loyalty, and inspire generations. Because they know how to speak to the heart before they speak to the wallet. You can be one of them. You can start right now. Because storytelling isn't just a skill. It's a decision. A decision to show up differently. A decision to connect before you convince. A decision to stop selling and start storytelling. Let's anchor this in your mind one more time. People ignore facts but remember stories. Every time you talk, you're either boring or bonding. So ask yourself, in your next conversation, will you bore them or bond with them? You have a choice. And that choice changes everything. Because when your story sells, you don't need to push. The world pulls toward you. You've taken the first step. You've learned the foundation. That stories sell, logic doesn't. You've understood that emotion is your real strategy. Now it's time to go deeper. You've mastered the power of story. Now, let's explore the story that matters most. Your own. Because before you can sell anything, you have to sell yourself. Let's move forward. Chapter 2. Your origin story sells you first. Before you sell the product, you must sell yourself. Before people buy from you, they buy into you. They buy your energy. They buy your story. They buy your why. That's the key. You can have the greatest offer, the lowest price, the flashiest packaging. But if people don't trust you, they'll never trust what you sell. Your origin story isn't optional. It's essential. It's your foundation. It's your credibility. You have a choice. You can hide behind the product, or you can stand in front of it. You can let the product do the talking, or you can let your story do the connecting. Because connection always comes before conversion. Let's be real. People don't follow perfection. They follow authenticity. They follow truth. They follow someone who's been through the dirt, not someone who's never left the clean floor. The founder who failed 3 times and kept going. That's the one people believe in. That's the one people root for. That's the one they want to buy from. Because your scars sell more than your trophies ever will. So let's talk about your origin story. What is it? It's not a resume. It's not a pitch deck. It's not a timeline of achievements. Your origin story is the moment you decided to care. It's the reason you started this journey in the first place. It's the fire behind your mission. It's your why. And that why has to be louder than your product features, louder than your marketing plan, louder than your fear. When people hear your story, they should feel your purpose. They should sense the conviction behind your words. They should know, this person means it. That's what sells. Here's what most people get wrong. They think customers care about what they do. They don't. They care about why they do it. You're not selling shoes. You're selling the belief that everyone deserves comfort and confidence. You're not selling software. You're selling freedom from frustration. You're not selling coaching. You're selling transformation, belief, and clarity. People buy purpose, not process. You have to give them a reason to believe in you. Think about it. When Elon Musk talks about Tesla, he doesn't start with electric cars. He starts with the future of sustainable energy. When Steve Jobs talked about Apple, he didn't talk about processors. He talked about thinking different. They didn't just sell products. They sold why they existed. That's your model. That's your mission. That's the key. So here's your work for this chapter. This is your transformation exercise. Step 1. Identify your defining moment. What pushed you to do what you do? What event made you say, enough, I'm changing this? That's the beginning of your story. Step 2. Find your struggle. Don't hide it. Don't sugarcoat it. Your struggle is what humanizes you. When you share your challenges, people see themselves in you. And when they see themselves in you, they trust you. Step 3. Define your turning point. When did it click? When did you decide to act? That's the emotional heartbeat of your story. That's where the listener feels the shift, where they go from interesting to inspired. Step 4. Clarify your mission. Every story has a message. What's yours? What truth do you want your audience to take away from your journey? Keep it simple. Keep it powerful. Because the simpler your story, the stronger it hits. You don't need their permission to tell your story. You just need courage to tell it honestly. And here's the truth. Most people never tell their story because they think it's not good enough. They think it's not dramatic enough. They think it's not inspiring enough. That's a lie. Your story doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be true. That's the discipline. Not the drama, the truth. Not the perfection, the authenticity. It's not about impressing. It's about expressing. That's how trust is built. That's how belief begins. That's how sales happen. Naturally, organically, powerfully. Let's break it down. When you tell your origin story right, it does 3 things instantly. It creates credibility. People believe what's real. When they see that you've walked the path, they listen. It builds emotional connection. They stop seeing you as a seller and start seeing you as a fellow human. It opens the door to transformation. They start thinking, if they did it, maybe I can too. That's the magic of storytelling. That's why your story is your strongest sales strategy. Here's a reality check. You can't fake your story. People can smell false confidence. They can sense when you're performing, so stop performing. Start telling the truth. If you failed, say it. If you learned, share it. If you struggled, show it. Because every time you hide a failure, you hide the part people would actually relate to. Perfection distances you. Honesty connects you. You have a choice. Hide your pain and be forgettable. Or share your truth and be unforgettable. The best salespeople in the world aren't just closers. They're storytellers. They don't just persuade. They relate. And the story they tell most often is their own. They don't try to be the hero. They make the customer the hero. They're just the guide. The proof that transformation is possible. When your story becomes the bridge to their hope, you've already sold before the price is even mentioned. That's the real art. That's the real skill. That's the real sale. Let me remind you, your journey is your credibility. Your experience is your evidence. Your authenticity is your advantage. So stop hiding behind your product. Stand in front of it. Be the story people remember when the details fade. Because stories stick. Data fades. Emotion buys. You've learned the first truth. People buy stories, not facts. Now you've learned the second. They buy you before they buy it. Your origin story is the heartbeat of your brand. It's what transforms a transaction into trust. It's what turns a message into movement. You've built the foundation. You've learned to sell yourself through authenticity and truth. Now it's time to use that power. Because once you've earned trust, you must know what to do with it. You've learned who you are. Now let's learn how to tell your customer story. You've sold yourself first. Now sell through their pain, their journey, their transformation. Get ready for the next chapter. Chapter 3. Turn problems into plot lines. Every problem is a story waiting to be told. Every obstacle is a plot line waiting to unfold. Every frustration your customer feels is your opportunity to lead them to victory. That's the key. You're not in the business of selling products. You're in the business of rewriting stories. You're not just solving problems. You're giving people a new ending. You have a choice. You can look at your customer's problem as a complaint, or you can look at it as a conflict that needs a resolution. And every great story, every story that sells, is built around conflict. Think about it. Every movie, every legend, every book you've ever loved starts with a problem. Without a problem, there's no plot. Without a plot, there's no reason to care. So stop avoiding problems. Start using them. Because your customer's problem is your greatest storytelling weapon. Don't sell solutions. Tell resolutions. Here's the mistake most people make. They talk about what their product does instead of what their customer feels. They try to fix the problem before they even understand it. And that's why no one listens. When someone tells you about their struggle, they don't want a salesperson. They want a guide. They want someone who gets it. Someone who's seen it, felt it, lived it, and found a way through. That's your job. Not to sell them something, but to walk them through their own story, from pain to power. That's how you sell without selling. Let me make this clear. Your customer isn't the victim in your story. They're the hero. And you? You're the mentor. The guide. The Yoda to their Luke. The one who says, I've been where you are, and here's how you win. When you tell your story like that, everything changes. They stop seeing you as a vendor. They start seeing you as a voice. You're not competing for attention anymore. You're earning trust. And trust always buys. So how do you do it? How do you turn a customer's problem into a story that sells? Follow this simple framework. Step 1. Define the problem clearly. Don't rush it. Don't generalize it. Say it in their language, not yours. Make them feel understood. When they hear their own thoughts come out of your mouth, they'll listen to everything else you say. Step 2. Introduce the conflict. Show them the emotional cost of staying stuck. What happens if nothing changes? What do they lose by doing nothing? This is where you raise the stakes. Because people don't move when they understand the problem. They move when they feel the pressure of it. Step 3. Present the turning point. Tell a story about someone just like them who reached a breaking point and took action. That's where transformation begins. That's where belief starts. Step 4. Deliver the resolution. Now, and only now, introduce your product, service, or message as the tool that guided that change. Not as the hero, but as the helping hand. Because people don't want a product to save them. They want a story that shows them they can save themselves. That's the key. Here's an example. Imagine you're selling a productivity app. You could say, our app helps you organize your day and save 3 hours daily. Or you could tell a story. Sarah used to work late every night. She was drowning in to-do lists and missing time with her kids. One day, she realized she wasn't overwhelmed. She was unorganized. She started using our app. 2 months later, she's finishing work by 5 p.m. and reading bedtime stories again. See the difference? The first line sells a feature. The second sells a future. That's what storytelling does. It turns a problem into a plot line and the listener into the hero. Don't sell solutions. Tell resolutions. Say it again. Don't sell solutions. Tell resolutions because people don't want to be sold a product. They want to be invited into a story where they win. Here's what I want you to understand. Every sales conversation is a movie scene. There's a hero, a conflict, a mentor, and a resolution. If you don't create that emotional structure, people tune out. They forget you the moment you stop talking. But when you frame their problem as part of a bigger story, they remember you. They remember the feeling you gave them. And when it's time to buy, they'll come back to the one who made them feel understood. That's the discipline. That's the strategy. Let's go deeper. Your customer's pain isn't the obstacle. It's the entry point. Their frustration isn't the barrier. It's the bridge. You have to listen to their problem, not as a complaint, but as a clue. Every problem contains a story. Every story contains a solution. Your job is to tell it in a way that transforms their perspective. Because when perspective changes, behavior follows. You have a choice. You can try to close the sale, or you can open the story. One creates pressure. The other creates possibility. Which one do you think sells more? Let me give you a rule to live by. The bigger the problem, the greater the potential for transformation. So don't shy away from problems. Don't skip over them. Lean into them. Show the customer that their problem isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning. When you do that, you give them hope. You give them vision. And hope is the most powerful buying emotion there is. You're not selling them relief. You're selling them rebirth. That's what storytelling does. It reframes pain as purpose. It turns struggle into strategy. It gives meaning to the mess. That's not salesmanship. That's leadership. Remember this forever. People don't buy your solution because it's perfect. They buy it because it fits perfectly inside the story they're living. If you can describe their problem better than they can, they'll assume you have the answer they need. That's why you must master storytelling around conflict. Because conflict is the pulse of every great pitch. Don't sell solutions. Tell resolutions. That's your mantra. That's your mission. You've now learned how to turn pain into power, conflict into connection, and frustration into fuel. That's how you transform a simple sales message into a story that moves people. You've learned to see the customer not as a problem to fix, but as a hero to guide. You've learned to sell without pressure, by storytelling through purpose. You've turned problems into plot lines. Now it's time to turn tension into transformation, because every great story and every great sale depends on what happens next. You've built the connection. Now, you must hold their attention. Let's go deeper. Let's learn the art of suspense, emotion, and anticipation. Chapter 4. Build tension before you deliver value. You talk too soon. That's the mistake. You give away the ending before the story even begins. And that's why nobody listens. Great storytellers understand one thing. Tension sells. Suspense is currency. Curiosity is leverage. If your audience isn't leaning in, they're walking away. You have to earn their attention before you deliver your value. That's the key. Let's break this down. When you sell, teach, or pitch, your instinct is to explain everything up front. You think if you give all the information, people will believe you. Wrong. Information doesn't hook the human brain. Anticipation does. People don't pay attention to answers. They pay attention to questions. That's why the greatest storytellers, in film, in books, in sales, always start with tension. They start with something's not right, a conflict, a mystery, a problem that demands resolution. You have a choice. Start your conversation with data and lose them instantly. Or start with curiosity and pull them in so deep they can't look away. Think about every great movie you've ever watched. They don't open with a happy ending. They open with trouble, a chase scene, a loss, a dilemma. Why? Because tension gives your brain a reason to care. And the same rule applies in sales, leadership, or influence. When you remove all the tension, you remove all the power. Don't say, "Our product saves you time." Say, "Most people waste half their day on tasks they hate, and they don't even realize it." Now you've built tension. Now they're listening. Now they need to know what happens next. That's how stories sell. Not by flooding facts, but by framing conflict. Here's what you need to understand. Tension doesn't mean drama. It means emotional engagement. It means giving your listener a question their brain must answer. Ask questions like, "What do you think happens when?" "Have you ever felt like?" "Why do most people fail at?" These open loops keep the human mind hungry. That hunger is your greatest weapon in storytelling. Don't close the loop too soon. Don't rush to deliver the value before they crave it. It's not about speed. It's about timing. That's the discipline. Imagine this. You're selling a productivity app. You could say, "It helps teams save 40% of their time." Or you could say, "Every morning, millions of people open their laptops and lose 2 hours before they even start." Why? Because no one told them this one thing. See the difference? The first line gives effect. The second line builds tension. One informs. The other transforms. People don't buy facts. They buy feelings. They buy curiosity. They buy relief from uncertainty. When you hold the tension, you hold their mind. When you rush to the point, you lose it. You have to discipline yourself to delay gratification. Not just in life, but in storytelling. You have to make your audience earn the solution. That's the power of pacing. That's the art of delivery. You don't need their permission to pause. You don't need to justify suspense. You create it on purpose. It's not manipulation. It's respect. Because you respect your listener enough to take them on a journey, not dump information on them. Here's how to practice it in real conversations. Start with a mystery. Begin your next sales call with a line like, "There's something most business owners overlook when trying to grow, and it's costing them thousands." That's an open loop. You just created tension. Layer curiosity. Tease what's coming without giving it all away. Use phrases like, "What happened next surprised everyone," or "The answer isn't what you think." Deliver the value after the build. Once they're emotionally invested, then reveal your insight, your lesson, your product. That's when it lands. That's when it sticks. Every effective story, in business or in life, has 3 beats. Conflict, struggle, resolution. Skip the first 2, and the last one means nothing. Don't tell people your solution before they feel the problem. Don't show them the mountaintop before they felt the climb. That's what most salespeople get wrong. They brag about the features, the benefits, the numbers. They sound smart, but they don't sound human, because humans need struggle to feel meaning. Without conflict, there's no connection. That's the key. Let's talk about discipline. Building tension isn't natural. It's uncomfortable. You'll feel tempted to reveal everything too soon, but you must hold back. You have to resist the urge to fill the silence, because silence is power. Pause. Let them feel the gap. Let them anticipate the answer. In that silence, something happens. They start imagining. They start engaging. And that's when your story becomes their story. Remember this line. Don't sell solutions. Tell resolutions. That's your mantra for this chapter. Because people don't remember what you told them. They remember what they felt. When you use tension correctly, you create an emotional roller coaster. You make them feel the problem, desire the solution, and celebrate the resolution. That's what moves people to act. You don't need their permission to tell a story that breathes. You don't need to apologize for suspense. Because suspense is service. It keeps them listening long enough to learn something that changes them. So here's your assignment. This week, take your next pitch, lesson, or presentation and remove the first 5 facts you usually say. Start instead with a question, a story, or a problem that leaves them hanging. Then wait, hold it. Let the tension work for you. You'll notice something powerful. They lean in. Their body language shifts. Their brain wakes up. Because now they're emotionally hooked. That's storytelling mastery. That's influence at work. When you build tension before delivering value, you're not just selling, you're transforming the experience. You're turning information into emotion. You're turning attention into action. And that's what every powerful communicator does. You've learned to build suspense. You've learned to make people lean in. Now, let's talk about what happens once you've got their attention. Because attention without structure is chaos. You built the tension. Now let's shape the flow. Chapter 5. The emotional currency of trust. Here's a truth that most people never admit. Logic alone doesn't sell. Facts alone don't convince. Charts, graphs, features, and stats can impress the mind. But the heart is where the decision is made. That's the key. Emotion converts. Logic only justifies the choice after the feeling has already happened. You have a choice. You can rely on rational arguments and hope people follow. Or you can earn trust and watch them move before you even say the price. Let me make this simple. Trust is the currency of all influence. It's not optional. It's not negotiable. If they don't trust you, nothing else matters. No discount. No free trial. No guarantee. You can have the best product in the world. But without trust, your words are just noise. And here's the hardest part. Trust isn't told. It's felt. Say it again. Trust isn't told. It's felt. You can't demand it. You can't fake it. You can't manipulate it with clever marketing. You earn it through emotion, consistency, and vulnerability. Vulnerability? Yes, vulnerability. Most people think admitting a mistake or a fear is weakness. Wrong. It's strength. It's proof that you're human. People relate to human, not perfection. Think about it. The salesperson who says, "I get it, I've failed too," wins more hearts than the one who says, "Everything I do is flawless," because admitting struggle makes you real. It makes you trustworthy. It builds a bridge to their emotion. You have to understand this. Trust is emotional, not rational. You can't shortcut it with facts. You can't force it with authority. You build it with honesty, integrity, and consistent behavior. Here's a simple formula. Be relatable. Tell a small personal story that shows you understand their pain, not a grand success story, a relatable struggle. People say, finally, someone who gets it. Be transparent. Share a challenge you faced with the product, the process, or yourself. Reveal a lesson learned. People trust those who admit imperfection and grow. Be consistent. Trust is reinforced when your words match your actions over time. If you say you care about their success, prove it with repeated behavior. You don't need their permission to be authentic. You don't need their approval to admit mistakes. You don't need to pretend perfection. That's the discipline. It's not about hiding flaws. It's about showing integrity. Here's an example. Imagine you're selling a high-ticket coaching program. You could start with a guarantee. Our system works for everyone, and you'll get results fast. Or you could say, I've worked with hundreds of people. Some didn't get it at first. Some struggled more than others. And I've been there myself, doubting, frustrated, unsure. But here's what changed when I stuck to the process. Which one inspires confidence? Which one earns trust? Exactly. The first is acclaim. The second is felt credibility. Trust isn't about telling people to believe you. It's about letting them feel it. Let's dive deeper. There are 3 emotional levers that build trust. Relatability. Share your story in a way they can see themselves. Mirror their challenges, their fears, their doubts. When someone recognizes themselves in your words, they subconsciously think, they understand me. They get me. 2. Vulnerability. Admit what went wrong, what scared you, what didn't work. People subconsciously believe you're honest when you're not perfect. Perfection is suspicious. Vulnerability is believable. Empathy. Respond to their problems, frustrations, and emotions with care. Don't just offer a solution. Validate their experience. Say, I know how frustrating this is. I've been there. You see the pattern? Every point circles back to emotion, not facts. Not logic, emotion. You might ask, hasn't honesty ever backfired? Yes, sometimes people won't relate. Sometimes they won't care. That's okay. You don't need everyone to trust you. You need the right people to trust you. Because your audience isn't everyone. It's those who resonate with your story, your integrity, and your mission. You have a choice. You can try to convince everyone with logic, or you can earn deep trust with the people who matter. Trust isn't about popularity. It's about connection. Connection that drives action. Here's the harsh reality. Without trust, your story falls flat. Without trust, tension and resolution are meaningless. Without trust, even your origin story won't convert. That's why you must prioritize emotional connection over every other strategy. It's not about flashy features. It's about discipline in honesty. It's not about being liked. It's about being felt. Let me give you a practice exercise. Write down one fear or failure you've experienced related to your product or service. Share it in a story format. What happened, how you felt, and what you learned. Practice delivering it with authenticity, not theatrics. Notice what happens. When you own your vulnerability, your audience leans in. They listen more closely. They trust more deeply. That's how emotion becomes your currency. That's how trust becomes your leverage. Repetition, say it again. Trust isn't told, it's felt. It's not about explaining how trustworthy you are. It's about letting people feel it through your story, your behavior, your transparency. Every great salesperson, coach, or leader knows this. Every influencer, every mentor, every guide knows this. They don't start with features. They start with feelings. They start with trust. You've already learned to tell stories. You've learned to create tension. Now, you're learning to anchor your story in trust. That's the foundation of every conversion. That's the difference between someone buying once and someone following you for life. That's the difference between a sale and a relationship. Here's your final takeaway for this chapter. You can't shortcut trust. You can't demand it. You can't fake it. But you can earn it. By sharing your struggles. By admitting mistakes. By connecting emotionally before delivering logic. You have a choice. You can be transactional and forgotten. Or you can be emotional and remembered. Trust isn't optional. Trust isn't secondary. Trust is the currency. And it's earned with emotion, vulnerability, and authenticity. You've built tension. You've introduced problems and plot lines. Now, you've learned the emotional engine that drives decisions. Trust. Without trust, your story stops here. With trust, your story drives transformation. You've laid the foundation. Now it's time to structure your narrative for maximum impact. Chapter 6. Speak like you're remembered. Here's a truth most people ignore. Stories aren't just told, they're performed. It's not enough to have a great plot, conflict, or resolution. If your delivery is flat, emotionless, or rushed, the story dies before it reaches the listener. That's the key. You have a choice. You can mumble your brilliance and hope someone catches it, or you can perform your story in a way people remember, repeat, and act on. Think about it. Why do some speakers, entrepreneurs, and leaders stick in your mind forever? Steve Jobs, Oprah, Jordan Peterson, Simon Sinek. It's not just what they said. It's how they said it. Jobs didn't just introduce the iPhone. He didn't just list features. He told a story about simplicity, elegance, and transformation. Every pause, every inflection, every gesture reinforced the narrative. You don't need their permission to be remembered. You only need to master your voice, rhythm, and presence. Let's break it down. Performing a story isn't acting. It's intentional communication. It's deliberate emphasis. It's creating emotional resonance with every word you speak. Here's your first principle. Tone conveys trust. Your tone can make people lean in or tune out. Flat tone equals flat connection. Energetic tone equals engagement. Confident tone equals authority. Repeat this. Tone carries weight your words cannot. It's not enough to say, "This will help you." Say it like you believe it with every fiber of your being. Second principle, pause is power. Most people fear silence. They rush through sentences, cramming every thought into one breath. Don't do that. Pause after a key point. Pause after a conflict. Pause before the resolution. Why? Because your listener needs space to process, feel, and imagine. Silence amplifies tension. Silence emphasizes emotion. Silence makes your story sticky. Say it again. Pause is power. Third principle, structure drives rhythm. Every great story has 4 beats. Setup. Introduce the hero, the problem, and the stakes. Struggle. Highlight the conflict, the tension, the challenge. Shift. Reveal the turning point, the insight, or the choice. Solution. Deliver the resolution, the lesson, the transformation. You don't just tell this sequence. You perform it. Set up with calm authority. Struggle with emotional intensity. Shift with deliberate suspense. Solution with confident closure. You have a choice. Read words. Or perform a story that lingers in memory. You know which one creates influence. Here's a practical example. Imagine you're pitching a new productivity method. You could say, "Our system increases efficiency by 40%, or you could perform, "Every morning millions wake up, coffee in hand, inbox overflowing." The chaos is relentless until someone discovered a different way. A way to reclaim time, to regain focus, to finally control their day. What happened next changed everything. Notice the difference. The first line is flat. The second is rhythmic, emotional, performed. It paints a picture. It creates anticipation. It sticks. That's storytelling mastery. That's influence. Let's talk about repetition in delivery. It's not enough to repeat the concept in the words. You repeat it in the rhythm. You repeat it in gestures. You repeat it in pauses. For example, stories stick. Data fades. Emotion buys. Say it slowly the first time. Pause. Let it resonate. Say it again, slightly faster. Pause again. Let them feel it. Then, deliver it with conviction, emphasizing the last word, buys. That repetition reinforces memory. It makes your message unforgettable. Another element, visual and vocal cues. Your voice is part of the story. Your face is part of the story. Your body language is part of the story. Leaning in shows intimacy. Pausing while raising your hands signals tension. Smiling after a resolution signals relief. These cues are nonverbal storytelling. Most people ignore them. Most people sound robotic. You create presence. Presence converts attention into action. You don't need their permission to own the room. You only need awareness and discipline. Here's a discipline exercise for mastery. Pick a story from your sales or personal experience. Record yourself telling it aloud, as if speaking to one person. Notice tone, pause, inflection, gestures. Refine it, perform it, repeat it. You'll hear the difference immediately. You'll feel it. And over time, your audience will feel it too. Remember this mantra. It's not about what you say. It's about how you say it. You could have the best story in the world, but a flat delivery kills it. Conversely, an average story delivered with rhythm, pause and tone can influence, inspire, and convert. That's why public speakers, top salespeople, and legendary entrepreneurs don't just prepare content. They perform it. Every inflection, every pause, every breath is intentional. That's the difference between being heard and being remembered. Let's repeat a few key truths for reinforcement. Tone conveys authority. Pause amplifies tension. Structure drives rhythm. Performance sticks where facts fail. Repetition embeds memory. Say it out loud. You have a choice. Speak to be heard. Speak to be remembered. Speak to transform. Now, a challenge. Next time you present, pitch, or tell a story. Start by identifying your setup, struggle, shift, and solution. Add deliberate pauses at tension points. Adjust your tone to match the emotion. Use repetition strategically. Observe the effect. You'll notice a powerful truth. People don't just listen to you. They experience your story. They remember your story. They act on your story. That's influence. That's transformation. To close this chapter, remember, stories aren't just words on a page. Stories aren't just bullet points in a pitch. Stories are experiences, lived, felt, and performed. You have the power to control every aspect: tone, pause, rhythm, repetition, and presence. You have a choice: perform or perish. It's not about flawless delivery. It's about disciplined storytelling that stays in the mind and moves the heart. You mastered the art of tension. You understand the emotional currency of trust. Now it's time to make every word, every pause, every beat count. Chapter 7. Frame the value, don't force the sale. Here's a harsh truth most people ignore. Sales isn't about pushing. Sales isn't about closing. Sales isn't about fear, guilt, or urgency. That's the key. You have a choice. You can pressure someone to buy and leave them resentful, or you can guide perception, frame value, and make the decision inevitable. Stories are your vehicle. Stories aren't decoration. Stories aren't filler. Stories are the mechanism by which perception shifts, belief grows, and resistance falls. Repeat this. When belief rises, resistance falls. Let's break this down. Imagine two salespeople. The first one says, "Buy now or miss out forever." The second one says, "Let me tell you about Sam." 6 months ago, Sam faced the same struggle you're facing. He didn't know where to start. He was frustrated, overwhelmed, stuck. Then he applied a system. Simple, consistent, practical. Today, Sam has more time, more clarity, and more confidence than he ever imagined. Which approach do you think works better? Exactly. The first creates tension, urgency, and pressure, but no belief. The second builds belief, demonstrates value, and naturally lowers resistance. You don't force a sale. You frame value. Framing value is subtle. It's about perception. It's about showing that what you offer is already worth more than the price. It's not about convincing them. It's about guiding them to see it themselves. You have a choice. You can pitch features, or you can craft a story where features become solutions and solutions become transformation. That's the difference between selling and influencing. Here's how to frame value through story. Identify the transformation. What does your product, service, or idea really do? Don't talk about features. Talk about what life looks like after the change. How will they feel? What will they accomplish? How will their world be different? Anchor the price in context. Never present a number first. First, show what the value is. Then the cost seems minimal. You're not overcharging. You're showing that the benefit far outweighs the investment. Use social proof and relatability. Stories of similar people achieving results create credibility. When someone sees themselves in the story, resistance drops. Belief rises. Repeat. When belief rises, resistance falls. Let's use a concrete example. Imagine you're selling a leadership program. You could say, "Enroll now for $999. Or you could frame value through a story. Last year, Maria was struggling to motivate her team. Meetings were unproductive. Projects stalled. She invested in our leadership program, followed the system, and 6 months later, her team delivered record results. Sales went up. Morale skyrocketed. She became the leader everyone respected. And the investment? It paid for itself within months. Do you see it? The price is no longer a barrier. The value is so clear, the cost is irrelevant. Here's the discipline you must master. You don't push. You don't convince. You guide perception. That's how stories become your most powerful sales tool. That's how influence works in real life. You have a choice. You can push a product and create resentment. Or you can tell a story and create a believer. One builds a transaction, the other builds transformation. Now, let's address a common mistake. Many people think storytelling ends at tension and resolution. They believe that once the story ends, the sale happens automatically. Wrong. You must explicitly connect the story to the value you're offering. This is called the bridge. The bridge is simple. Highlight the struggle. Show the transformation. Explicitly tie that transformation to the solution you provide. Without the bridge, the story inspires, but doesn't convert. With the bridge, the story becomes a map from desire to action. Repeat it. Bridge the story to the value. Don't force the sale. Here's a practical exercise for you. Identify your core story, a client, a customer, or personal experience. Break it into 4 beats: struggle, realization, transformation, result. Craft a bridge that ties the transformation directly to your product, service, or solution. Practice telling it aloud. Use pauses and inflection to emphasize emotional beats. Notice how resistance naturally drops when the story frames value first. Another critical point, timing. Never rush the value. Never unload the solution too early. Let the story build. Let belief rise. Let tension dissolve. Then, and only then, introduce your offer. By now, the listener is ready to act. The sale feels natural. The decision feels theirs, not yours. You have a choice. Push the sale or frame the value. The difference is enormous. Let's reinforce with repetition. Pressure kills perception. Stories build belief. Belief lowers resistance. Resistance dissolves when value is framed, not forced. Say it again. When belief rises, resistance falls. That's the mantra. That's your actionable truth. Use it consistently. One more example. You're selling a fitness program. Pressure. Sign up today or never get fit. Story plus value frame. 2 years ago, James couldn't climb a flight of stairs without huffing. He felt tired, frustrated, and stuck. Then he followed a proven system, small daily steps, accountability, and guidance. 6 months later, James ran his first 5K. He feels energized. He's confident. He's transformed. And the program cost less than his weekly coffee habit. The results? Priceless. Do you see it? The listener doesn't feel pushed. They feel opportunity. They feel transformation. They feel belief. That's how stories sell. Not by force, but by framing value. Remember this truth. You don't need to be aggressive. You don't need to manipulate. You don't need gimmicks. You need to be intentional. You need to guide perception. You need to show that the value is already worth more than the price. You have a choice. You can sell, or you can create believers. Repeat. When belief rises, resistance falls. This is your guiding principle. This is the discipline of influence. Now, to close this chapter, you've learned to build tension, earn trust, speak like you're remembered. Now you must frame the value before asking for action. Stop forcing the sale. Stop rushing. Stop relying on pressure tactics. Instead, guide perception. Let the story demonstrate worth. Let belief rise naturally. When belief rises, resistance falls. And that's when transformation happens. For them and for you. You framed the value. Now it's time to make the story impossible to forget. Chapter 8. The Power of the 3-Minute Story. Here's a reality most people refuse to face. The world has less attention than ever. People scroll. People swipe. People tune out in seconds. Your audience won't sit through 50 slides, 20 features, or a 10-minute anecdote. That's the key. You have a choice. You can overload them with information and hope they retain it. Or you can deliver a powerful, concise story that sticks in under 3 minutes. Short stories win. Clarity beats complexity. Simplicity drives action. Repeat it. Short stories win. Clarity beats complexity. Let's be honest. You've seen presentations die. You've watched people nod politely, then forget everything 5 minutes later. It's not because the content was bad. It's because it wasn't digestible. It wasn't performable. It wasn't memorable. Enter the 3-minute story, the micro story. The story that grabs attention, creates tension, delivers transformation, and leaves your audience ready to act, all before the coffee gets cold. Here's the discipline you must master. Hook immediately. Start with a sentence that shocks, intrigues, or surprises. You won't believe what happened to Sarah in just one day. Most people fail at this before they even begin. The hook isn't optional. It's essential. You have 3 minutes, waste a second, and you've lost them. Conflict is your engine. Every story needs tension. Even in a micro story, conflict drives emotional engagement. Show the struggle, the fear, or the problem. Sarah was overwhelmed. Deadlines were piling up. She felt like giving up. Conflict makes them lean in. Conflict makes them relate. Conflict makes them care. Deliver the lesson. Every story must teach. What did Sarah learn? What did your client discover? What insight shifts perception? Keep it concise. Keep it clear. Through a simple system of prioritization, Sarah regained control. She discovered that small daily wins compound into lasting success. Close with a result. End with transformation. End with outcome. End with clarity. Within a month, Sarah's team doubled productivity. She felt confident, energized, and unstoppable. Results validate the lesson. Results make your story credible. Let's put it together. Hook, conflict, lesson, result. That's your micro-story formula. It's repeatable. It's scalable. It's powerful. You don't need an hour. You don't need slides. You need clarity, rhythm, and discipline. Why is this so critical? Because attention is your most valuable currency. You have a choice. Waste it with long-winded explanations, or maximize it with a story that hits like a bullet and resonates like an echo. Repeat it. You have a choice. Maximize attention or lose it. Here's a concrete example. Imagine you're selling a productivity app. Long version. Here are 37 features. You can track your time, set reminders, integrate with calendars, monitor progress, set goals, analyze trends, and much more. The audience's eyes glaze over. Attention drops. Interest dies. Micro-story version. John couldn't finish a single task without distraction. He tried everything. Planners, alarms, sticky notes. Then he discovered a simple app. Within a week, he completed 3 projects he'd been avoiding for months. And he finally felt in control. Which story sticks? Which story moves people emotionally? Which story frames the value without forcing the sale? Exactly. Let's reinforce the repetition principle. Short is stronger. Conflict drives attention. Lesson anchors transformation. Results validate credibility. Say it aloud. Short is stronger. Conflict drives attention. Lesson anchors transformation. Results validate credibility. Your microstory is a weapon. Used correctly, it will cut through noise, skepticism, and distraction. Here's another tip. Rhythm is crucial. 3 minutes isn't just about time. It's about pacing. Speak in beats. Pause at tension points. Accelerate during resolution. Let your audience feel the journey. You don't need flashy visuals. You don't need technical jargon. You need performance, clarity, and emotional resonance. Let's address a common misconception. Some people think short stories lack depth. Wrong. Depth isn't about length. Depth is about emotional impact. Depth is about relatability, clarity, and transformation. You have a choice. Add filler for the sake of length, or add intensity for the sake of impact. The microstory favors intensity. Intensity sticks. Length forgets. Here's a practical exercise to master the 3-minute story. Pick a personal, client, or customer story. Identify the hook, conflict, lesson, and result. Time yourself. Trim anything that doesn't drive the story forward. Practice delivering it with pauses, emphasis, and emotion. Repeat daily until it can be told naturally in 180 seconds or less. Discipline matters. It's not about being perfect. It's about being concise, clear, and unforgettable. Another layer. Use repetition inside the microstory. Even in 3 minutes, you can reinforce key truths. For example, she struggled. She persisted. She succeeded. They doubted. She believed. Results followed. Small changes, big impact. Lasting transformation. Notice the rhythm. Notice the memorability. Even in a microstory, repetition cements lessons in the mind. Here's the harsh reality. You will never win attention if you ramble. You will never convert if you overwhelm. You will never be remembered if you ignore clarity. Short stories aren't a luxury. They're your survival strategy in a distracted world. You have a choice. Overwhelm or distill. You have a choice. Talk forever or influence instantly. Repeat it. You have a choice. Clarity beats complexity. Short stories win. To summarize the discipline of the 3-minute story: hook. Grab attention immediately. Conflict. Create tension that resonates. Lesson. Deliver insight clearly. Result. Show transformation. Use pauses. Use rhythm. Use emotion. Reinforce the key message repeatedly. Practice relentlessly. Your audience is short on time. Your story doesn't have to be long. It has to be impactful. It has to be memorable. It has to move them to action. Finally, remember this. Microstories aren't just about brevity. They're about precision, performance, and persuasion. You can't afford filler. You can't afford monotone. You can't afford to ignore emotional beats. You have a choice. You can tell a story that's forgotten in 30 seconds, or you can tell a story that lingers for days. Short stories win. Clarity beats complexity. Microstories move people faster than any slide deck, any feature list, or any lecture. You mastered tension. You anchored trust. You performed your story. Now, you've learned how to deliver it in 3 minutes and change outcomes. Chapter 9. Stories multiply through people. Here's the reality most sellers ignore. Your story is only as powerful as the people who repeat it. No matter how perfect your delivery, no matter how well you frame value, if your audience can't remember it, it won't spread. That's the key. You have a choice. You can craft complicated, confusing stories that die on delivery, or you can create simple, powerful narratives that multiply on their own. Repeat it. A story shared is a sale multiplied. Think about it. Some of the most successful brands didn't dominate by advertising alone. They dominated because their story was memorable. Nike doesn't just sell shoes. It sells a story of overcoming, of discipline, of victory. Apple doesn't just sell technology. It sells a story of simplicity, innovation, and human connection. And here's the magic. Those stories are shared, repeated, retold, and each repetition spreads influence faster than any marketing budget. You have a choice. Control the story or let it die in silence. Craft it for sharing or craft it for one-way communication. It's not about flashy slides, charts, or technical jargon. It's about making your story sticky. Sticky means simple. Sticky means emotional. Sticky means repeatable. Here's the discipline you must master. Simplify the message. If your story has 10 main points, it will be forgotten. 1, maybe 2 key points are enough. Your audience should be able to recount it in a few sentences. You have a choice. Simplify or be ignored. Make it emotionally charged. People repeat stories that make them feel fear, triumph, relief, joy. These are triggers. When someone feels a story, they want to share it. Repetition reinforces memory. Emotion drives sharing. Create a narrative arc. Even in a micro story, the arc matters. Struggle, discovery, transformation. People remember the journey more than the feature. People remember the hero more than the product. Repeat it. Simple, emotional, structured. Let's use an example. Imagine a customer testimonial. Long version. John used our software. It helped him with project management, task tracking, communication, and reporting. He enjoyed using it and improved efficiency. Notice the problem? It's forgettable. It has details, but no emotional connection. Micro-story version for sharing. John's team was drowning in missed deadlines. Project stalled. Morale dropped. Then he discovered our system. Within a month, deadlines were met. Team spirit soared. And John finally felt in control. He couldn't stop telling his friends. Which story will people repeat? Which story multiplies your influence? Exactly. Here's a critical insight. Stories don't just sell products. Stories sell trust. Stories sell belief. Stories sell a reason for people to talk about you. You have a choice. Create something forgettable or create something viral by design. It's not about cleverness. It's about clarity. It's not about embellishment. It's about emotional truth. Here's how to make your story multiply. Step 1. Keep it simple. Trim the excess. Remove jargon. Remove side plots. Focus on one clear, impactful takeaway. Step 2. Make it memorable. Use hooks, metaphors, or vivid imagery. A bird trapped in a cage of deadlines is remembered. John was busy is forgotten. Step 3. Build social proof. Highlight relatable heroes. Your audience should see themselves in the story. Relatability increases sharing. Repeat. Simple. Memorable. Relatable. Here's a harsh truth. Most people don't repeat your story because it's complicated. Most people don't share because they don't feel it. Most people don't remember because it lacks structure. You have a choice. You can confuse or you can clarify. You can bore or you can inspire. You can tell a story that dies in one ear or one that spreads through networks. Now let's talk about repetition inside your story. Even simple stories need internal repetition. Repeat the key lesson or phrase multiple times. Humans remember patterns. Humans remember refrains. For example, she persisted. She believed. She achieved. Small wins. Big change. Lasting impact. One choice, one story, one transformation. Notice how each repetition reinforces memory? Notice how it primes your audience to retell it? This is how stories multiply. Another layer, encourage sharing intentionally. Don't just tell the story. Frame it so that it's easy for others to repeat. Use clear, concise language. Highlight the hero's emotional journey. End with a result that's tangible and relatable. You don't need to nag people to share. You just need to make it irresistible to repeat. Here's a practical exercise for you. Take one of your stories, client success, personal triumph, or product win. Reduce it to 180-300 seconds. Identify one key takeaway. Embed one emotional hook. Repeat the key phrase twice. Practice telling it aloud as if someone will immediately retell it. Discipline matters. It's not about perfection. It's about clarity, emotion, and repeatability. Let's reinforce the repetition. A story shared is a sale multiplied. Emotional resonance drives sharing. Simplicity ensures retention. Structure guarantees comprehension. Repetition cements memory. Say it aloud. A story shared is a sale multiplied. Emotional resonance drives sharing. Simplicity ensures retention. Structure guarantees comprehension. Repetition cements memory. Here's another real-world example. A small coffee shop in a city could spend thousands on ads, coupons, and promotions. Or it could craft one story. Emily struggled to find a quiet place to work. One morning, she discovered our cafe. Fresh coffee, peaceful corner, warm smiles. She stayed, created her first manuscript, and told her friends. Now they come every week. The story spreads organically. People repeat it. New customers arrive. No forced marketing. No pressure. Just story multiplied. Remember this mantra. You don't need to sell harder. You don't need to shout louder. You need to tell a story that others want to tell. A story that's simple, powerful, and repeatable. A story that multiplies. You have a choice. Remain a storyteller in isolation, or become a storyteller whose narrative spreads like wildfire. Finally, let's close the lesson of Chapter 9. Stories aren't just communication tools. Stories aren't just emotional hooks. Stories are multipliers of influence. You mastered performance. You mastered framing value. You mastered micro-stories. Now, you must craft stories that live beyond your voice. Repeat it one last time. A story shared is a sale multiplied. Your next step? Make your story unforgettable. Make it repeatable. Make it so powerful, people can't help but tell it. Chapter 10. The story never ends. It evolves. Here's a truth few people fully grasp. Your story is never finished. Ever. Not after the pitch. Not after the sale. Not after the applause. That's the key. You have a choice. You can treat your story like a static message, a one-time performance, a moment in time, or you can evolve it, refine it, and retell it as your audience grows, learns, and changes. Repeat it. The story never ends. It evolves. Think about the brands and leaders who dominate markets. Apple, Nike, Tesla. Their stories don't stop at the product. They adapt, they shift, they deepen. The sale isn't the climax. It's the beginning of a new chapter. And that's the principle you must internalize. Every customer, every follower, every audience member moves forward. If your story stays the same, it becomes irrelevant. If your story evolves, it becomes timeless. You have a choice: stagnation or transformation, repetition or evolution. It's not about being flashy. It's about being adaptable. Let's break it down. Listen to your audience. A story evolves when you pay attention. Watch how your customers respond. Notice which parts resonate. Notice which parts fall flat. Use feedback. Not for validation, not for ego, for discipline. Your story grows stronger when shaped by reality, not assumption. Rewrite strategically. Iteration is your weapon. Change details, add depth, refine the arc. Keep the core truth. Keep the lesson. Adapt the context. Adapt the language. One story, multiple versions, each tailored to the evolving audience. Retell consistently. Evolution isn't just rewriting. It's retelling with impact. Every conversation, every meeting, every pitch is an opportunity. Perform it, refine it, measure it. Repeat the transformation. Embed it in the listener's mind. Here's the critical insight. A story that stops evolving dies. A story that evolves spreads. A story that evolves converts repeatedly. It adapts to new fears, new doubts, new challenges. It transforms passive listeners into advocates. You have a choice. Ignore evolution and fade into noise, or embrace it and become unforgettable. Let's use an example. Imagine a software company. Old story. Our tool tracks tasks and deadlines. Static. Forgettable. Limited, evolved story. Anna's team was drowning in missed deadlines. They felt paralyzed. Our tool helped them track tasks, prioritize, and communicate effectively. Months later, as the company grew, they faced bigger projects and tighter timelines. We adapted the platform, introduced new features, and shared updated strategies. Anna's team thrived, and they told their network. The story evolved, the impact multiplied. Notice the difference. The story grows as the audience grows. The sale isn't the end, it's the next chapter. The evolution sustains influence and builds loyalty. Here's another layer. Repeat the key lesson to cement transformation. Stories are living, not static. Stories evolve as your audience evolves. Stories grow when disciplined iteration is applied. Say it aloud. Stories are living, not static. Stories evolve as your audience evolves. Stories grow when disciplined iteration is applied. This repetition ensures it sinks in. It ensures you don't just hear it, you internalize it. It ensures your listener is ready to act. Now, let's talk about timing. When should your story evolve? Always, with every new client, with every new challenge, with every new insight. Evolution isn't optional, it's a discipline. If you ignore it, your story becomes stale. You have a choice. Discipline over complacency. Here's a practical framework for evolving your story. Assess the audience. Who are they? What do they care about? Have their goals or fears changed? Refine the conflict. Introduce a new challenge. Make the story relatable to their current situation. Highlight fresh lessons. What new insight can you give them? What transformation can you showcase? Update the result. Show continued growth. Show long-term impact. Show that success is not a one-time event. It's ongoing. Repeat. Assess, refine, highlight, update. Here's a warning. Some storytellers stop at the first sale. They think, the job is done. Wrong. The sale is not the conclusion. It's the opportunity to deepen connection. Your story must grow as your influence grows. Your story must mature as your audience matures. Your story must perform as your market evolves. You have a choice. Evolve or disappear. It's not about luck. It's about discipline. Let's reinforce this with an example from history. Nike didn't stop at selling shoes. They evolved the story of determination, discipline, and athletic triumph. Every campaign adapted the narrative to new audiences, new sports, new cultural moments. Their story evolved, and so did their dominance. You don't need to sell more. You need to adapt your story for greater impact. Another crucial point. Internal repetition within the evolving story strengthens retention. Even as details change, anchor key principles. Discipline beats distraction. Small victories compound. Transformation is the journey, not the end. Repetition anchors the evolution. Repetition ensures the story multiplies through people. Repetition reinforces credibility. Here's your listener challenge. Take one of your stories today. Rewrite it for your current audience. Update the conflict. Update the lesson. Update the result. Then tell it aloud. Observe how it lands. Refine again. Make it living. Make it adaptable. Make it unstoppable. You have a choice. Stories that fade or stories that evolve endlessly. You have a choice. Stagnation or mastery. To summarize the discipline of evolution, stories are living. Stories must grow with your audience. Stories require disciplined iteration and retelling. The sale is not the end. It is the beginning of a new chapter. Repeat aloud. Stories are living. Stories grow with your audience. Stories require iteration. The sale is the beginning, not the end. Finally, remember this. The story that evolves never dies. It spreads. It multiplies. It converts again and again. Your audience is growing. Your market is changing. Your influence must expand. Discipline your stories. Adapt relentlessly. Retell strategically. You mastered hooks, micro-stories, trust, emotional impact, and sharing. Now you've learned the final principle. Evolution. The story never ends. It grows, it multiplies, it converts. This is your ultimate weapon in sales, influence, and storytelling. And with that, your journey doesn't stop. Your story doesn't stop. You've learned how to sell with a story. Now it's time to live it, repeat it, and evolve it endlessly. The end? For now. The story begins again with every customer, every conversation, every retelling. Every sale begins with a story, not a script. Every product begins with emotion, not information. And every great salesperson isn't selling. They're serving through story. Remember this. People forget what you said, but they never forget how your story made them feel. So tell it again. Tell it with power. Tell it with purpose. Because your story isn't just part of your business. It is your business. Now go, sell with a story, and make the world remember your voice.